We spend so much of our lives looking outside of ourselves, don't we? Searching, hoping, waiting. We carry this silent belief that somewhere out there is a person, a connection, an experience that will finally make us feel whole. As if love is this missing piece of the puzzle, and the moment we find it, everything will fall into place. And yet, the moment we chase love from that place of lack, we forget the most important truth. We were never incomplete to begin with. This illusion that another person will fix what we don't want to face within ourselves is one of the most persistent myths of our time. It slips into our minds early, whispered through fairy tales, echoed in romantic comedies, wrapped into the lyrics of our favorite songs. We grow up believing that love is a destination, and once we arrive, our struggles will disappear. Our self-doubt will vanish. Our wounds will be healed. But that's not how love works. That's not how wholeness works. And it certainly isn't how self-worth is built. Let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself falling for someone not because they saw you, but because they made you feel seen? Because they gave you a sense of identity that you couldn't seem to find in yourself? That feeling is intoxicating. It's powerful. But it's also dangerous, because if your worth is built on someone else's attention, then your sense of self will always be at the mercy of their absence. We think love will rescue us, that it will somehow rewrite the parts of our story we're ashamed of. But love cannot do the work you refuse to do for yourself. Another person's affection is not a substitute for your own inner healing. No one, no matter how kind, how present, how deeply connected to you, can take away the responsibility of meeting yourself. That is your work, and in truth, it is the most meaningful work you will ever do. I've come to realize that we are all walking around with a shadow, a part of ourselves that we hide, suppress, or pretend doesn't exist. It carries our fears, our shame, our unmet needs, and so often we try to find someone who will love us enough to make that shadow go away. But here's the secret. The only way to free yourself from the grip of that shadow is to look at it, to sit with it, to understand that it's not the enemy, it's a map, a guide. It shows you where the pain lives, yes, but it also shows you where the healing needs to happen. You may think that loving yourself is selfish, that it's self-centered or even indulgent, but let me tell you, it is one of the most generous things you can do. Because when you stop placing the burden of your self-worth on another person's shoulders, you free both of you. You stop asking others to be your mirror, to tell you who you are, to fix what's broken. And instead, you start showing up in relationships not to complete each other, but to complement each other. The idea that someone will complete you is romantic, sure, but it's also deeply disempowering. Because it assumes that you are not already whole. And the truth is, you are. You were born whole. You were born with an identity before anyone ever told you who you should be. You were born with a heart capable of love before anyone ever broke it. You were born with worth, not because someone else recognized it, but because it was woven into your existence from the start. But we forget, don't we? We forget because life has a way of making us doubt it. We experience rejection, betrayal, heartbreak, and with every wound we start to question ourselves. We begin to believe we're not enough, or too much, or somehow fundamentally flawed. So we look for someone to prove otherwise, to tell us no, you're perfect as you are, you're lovable, you're worth it, and we crave that validation like water in a desert. But let me offer you something different. Instead of seeking someone to tell you that you're worthy, what would happen if you chose to believe it first? What would shift if you decided, without proof, without applause, that you are already enough? That your value doesn't come from being desired, but from being authentically you. That belief isn't arrogance, it's liberation. It's the quiet, steady knowing that you do not have to shrink yourself to be chosen. That love is not something you earn by sacrificing your needs or pretending to be someone else. that your soul is not a bargain to be traded for attention, and that any love you find out there will only ever reflect the love you've cultivated within. You see, true connection can only happen when we come as we are, not masked, not edited, not performing. And you cannot offer yourself fully to someone else until you have first made peace with who you are. Not the polished version, not the curated version, but the raw, unfiltered truth of your being. This isn't about swearing off love or relationships. It's about returning to yourself so completely that love becomes an extension, not a remedy. When you start loving yourself, not in a vague hashtag kind of way, but in a deep, committed, conscious way, you stop chasing love that's rooted in need. You start allowing love that's rooted in choice. So stop asking the world to complete you. Stop looking to someone else to fill the space you've been afraid to sit with. That space is not a flaw, it's an invitation. An invitation to come home to yourself. To reclaim every part of you, even the ones you've hidden, especially the ones you've hidden. You don't need to be found. You need to remember who you were before you forgot. There is a moment that comes to many of us, quietly, unexpectedly, when the noise fades, the conversations stop, and we're left alone. No distractions, no one reaching for us, no comforting voice on the other end of the phone. Just us. And in that stillness, there's a sensation that creeps in. Some call it emptiness, some call it sadness, but most call it loneliness, and most of us are terrified of it. Loneliness has a way of making us question our worth. It whispers lies, that we are unloved, unwanted, or forgotten. It can feel like a void so vast that we'll do anything to fill it, reach for anyone, settle for less, run faster towards something or someone, just to avoid looking at the space we're sitting in. But the truth is, loneliness isn't a curse. It's not some punishment handed down for being too flawed to be loved. It is something far more profound. It's a mirror. A mirror that reflects back not the absence of others, but the absence of ourselves. We often try to escape loneliness because we think it's telling us something is wrong. But what if it's just trying to tell us something is missing? Not missing in the world, but missing in our relationship with ourselves. Because how often do we truly spend time with who we are? Not the version we present, not the one we perform, but the self that exists when no one else is looking. We live in a world that romanticizes constant connection. Every moment can be filled with noise, scrolling, messaging, watching, consuming. We are rarely alone, yet more people than ever feel deeply lonely. Why is that? It's because loneliness isn't solved by proximity. You can be in a room full of people and still feel disconnected. You can be in a relationship and still feel unseen. Because loneliness is not about others being absent. It's about you being absent from yourself. When you begin to sit with loneliness instead of running from it, something remarkable starts to happen. At first, it may be uncomfortable. You may feel the sting of past wounds rising to the surface, or memories you thought you buried long ago coming back to whisper. But keep listening. Because underneath all of that noise is a presence that's been waiting for you. You. We spend so much energy searching for people who will understand us, who will see us, who will never leave. But what if the very person you're waiting for is actually you? What if the ache you feel isn't for another's embrace, but for your own? That's the great paradox. We long for others to fill the silence within us, but the silence is sacred. It's where the truth lives. It's where you get to meet the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, the insecure parts, the abandoned parts, the neglected child who just wanted to be held. Loneliness doesn't show you what's missing from the world. It shows you what you've abandoned in yourself. You see, there's a reason the quiet is hard, because it requires you to stop performing, to stop pretending. It asks for honesty. It demands attention, not the kind you give others, but the kind you've never given yourself. And when you start showing up to that space, not as a judge, but as a companion, everything begins to change. You begin to realize that solitude isn't a punishment, it's an invitation. It's the space where healing begins. Because no one can touch those inner wounds like you can. No one can soothe the ache of your own absence except you. And in that moment, when you choose to be present with yourself, no matter how uncomfortable it is, you take back your power. It doesn't mean you'll never crave connection again, of course you will. We're wired to love, to bond, to be seen. But the difference is, you'll stop needing connection to define you. You'll no longer settle for half versions of love just to fill the silence. Because you'll know how to sit in that silence and not be afraid of what it's trying to tell you. The more you practice being with yourself, the less you'll feel the urge to escape. And when love does come, real love, it won't be because you were starving for it. It'll be because you made peace with the quiet. Because you stopped waiting for someone else to make you feel whole and decided to meet yourself instead. There's an incredible power in choosing to face loneliness rather than numb it. It transforms you. It teaches you resilience, depth, and self-compassion. It teaches you to become your own source of comfort instead of always looking outward for it. That doesn't mean you won't still have moments where the ache returns, but those moments will no longer define you. They'll become reminders. Reminders to return to yourself, to reconnect, to remember. You don't need to be afraid of being alone. Because the person you find in that space, the one behind the masks, beyond the roles, is not broken, not empty, not unworthy. That person is simply waiting, waiting to be seen, waiting to be heard, waiting for you. So if you find yourself sitting in the quiet, wondering where everyone went, wondering why the love you long for hasn't arrived yet, take a breath. Not everything that feels like emptiness is a void. Sometimes it's just spaciousness. Sometimes it's just your soul making room for your return. And maybe, just maybe, it's not loneliness after all. It's you finally coming home. We throw the word self-love around a lot these days. You see it on social media, on wellness podcasts, in the language of self-care and treat-yourself culture. And while the intention behind it might be good, it's easy to forget that self-love isn't just a feeling. It isn't a mood. It's not something that magically appears when life is going well. True self-love isn't something you stumble into. It's something you build, moment by moment, through action, through choice, through honesty with yourself. Loving yourself doesn't always feel good in the moment. It doesn't always look pretty from the outside. Sometimes it looks like turning off your phone and facing your own thoughts. Sometimes it looks like walking away from something or someone you still want, but you know isn't good for you. Sometimes it looks like resting when everyone else is hustling, or speaking up when your voice shakes, or saying no when every part of you is afraid of disappointing someone. We talk about love like it's this grand, glowing thing. But love, especially the kind you give yourself, is often quiet. It's subtle. It shows up in your habits, your patterns, your decisions. And it reveals itself most clearly, not when life is easy, but when it's hard. Because how you treat yourself when everything falls apart, that's the real test of love. The truth is, most of us have spent a long time abandoning ourselves, not in obvious ways, but in small, quiet ones. Every time you said yes when you meant no, every time you put someone else's comfort ahead of your own truth, every time you swallowed your needs just to keep the peace. That's self-abandonment, and over time it chips away at your sense of worth. It teaches you that your voice doesn't matter, that your feelings are too much, that your needs are negotiable. But here's the thing, they're not. You are not too much. You are not asking for too much. You are simply remembering that you were never meant to be an afterthought in your own life. Self-love is the process of unlearning the story that your value depends on being needed, liked, or chosen. It's realizing that you don't have to earn your place. You already belong to yourself. And that belonging begins in boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they're doors. They're the way you teach others how to love you by how you love yourself. Saying, "This is what I can hold," or "This is where I end and you begin," that's not selfish. That's clarity. And clarity is love. It's respect. It's showing up to your life with integrity, even when it's uncomfortable. But self-love also requires grace, because you won't always get it right. You'll say yes when you should have said no. You'll hold on too long. You'll fall back into old patterns that you swore you'd outgrown. And when you do, self-love isn't standing in front of the mirror shouting affirmations. It's gently asking yourself, why did I do that? Not to judge, not to shame, but to understand. Self-love is curiosity over criticism, compassion over punishment. We are so quick to forgive others, but often so brutal with ourselves. We hold ourselves to impossible standards. We beat ourselves up for not healing fast enough, for still struggling, for still caring too much. But healing isn't linear. Growth isn't clean. And loving yourself means being patient with the parts of you that are still learning. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that self-love is something you'll reach once you've become your best self, once you've lost the weight, once you've stopped crying over them, once you've gotten the job, the partner, the peace. But that's backwards. You don't love yourself once you've arrived. You arrive because you loved yourself along the way. And loving yourself along the way might look really ordinary. It might look like going to bed earlier, drinking water, saying, "I'm not okay" out loud, letting yourself grieve, taking the long route home so you can think, listening to your gut even when it scares you. These aren't grand gestures, but they are love in its most honest form. Because love isn't just a feeling, it's a verb. It's the way you advocate for yourself. It's the way you stay loyal to your truth. It's the way you keep choosing yourself even after you've let yourself down. It's not always glamorous. Sometimes it's messy, painful, inconvenient. But it's real. And it's yours. The more you love yourself in action, the more you begin to see through the false loves. The ones that drain you, diminish you, or make you feel like you're too hard to hold. You begin to see that real love, from anyone, starts with respect. And the way you respect yourself sets the tone for every relationship you'll ever have. Self-love is not about becoming invincible. It's about becoming honest, real, rooted. It's about no longer negotiating your worth with people who can't see it. It's about knowing you are allowed to be a work in progress and still worthy of kindness, especially from yourself. And it's in that space, when you stop performing for love and start practicing it daily, that everything begins to shift. You stop chasing validation and start choosing alignment. You stop settling for attention and start seeking connection. And you stop needing love to prove your worth because your actions already prove it to yourself. Because real self-love isn't something you wait for, it's something you live. And every time you choose yourself, you remind the world how you deserve to be treated. It's natural to want love, to crave it, to imagine the kind of relationship that will finally make everything feel settled. We picture it clearly, someone who understands us without explanation, who holds us through the chaos, who stays. We say we want a love that's deep, whole, kind, steady. But here's the part we often miss. We don't attract what we want. We attract what we are. We can spend our lives crafting a checklist of what we're looking for in someone else: kindness, honesty, emotional maturity, loyalty. But if we're not offering those same things to ourselves, something doesn't align. If we haven't done the inner work to heal the wounds, calm the chaos, or recognize our patterns, we'll continue drawing in mirrors of the very pain we haven't addressed. It's uncomfortable to accept that we're not just passive receivers of the love we experience. We're participants, co-creators, and much of what shows up in our relationships is shaped by the emotional frequency we carry. If we're walking through life with a belief that we're unworthy, or that love has to be earned through suffering, we'll find people who unknowingly reinforce those beliefs, not because we deserve pain, but because that pain is familiar. We're drawn to what we know, even when it hurts, even when it contradicts what we say we want, because the nervous system doesn't crave what's good for us, it craves what it recognizes. And if what we recognize is inconsistency, abandonment, or chaos, then even the healthiest love can feel foreign, even uncomfortable. So the question isn't just, what kind of love do I want? The deeper question is, who am I being that continues to invite in the kind of love I don't? That isn't a question to shame yourself with. It's an invitation to become aware, to notice, to pause long enough to see the pattern playing out beneath the surface. Because all of us are carrying stories about love, stories we learned early, from what we saw, what we were taught, what we had to survive. Some of us learned that love meant sacrifice, that we had to earn attention by proving our worth, that being needed was the same as being loved. Others learned to chase emotionally unavailable people because that was what love looked like, distant, unpredictable, just out of reach. And unless we stop to examine those early lessons, we end up repeating them over and over, calling it fate or chemistry or bad luck. But it's not luck, it's unconscious repetition, until it becomes conscious choice. When you begin to heal, you change your frequency. You stop resonating with what once felt magnetic. The drama that used to excite you now exhausts you. The games lose their appeal. The chase feels meaningless, and instead of craving intensity, you begin to crave consistency. Instead of chaos, you seek peace, not because you've lowered your standards, but because you've raised your vibration. Healing is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming aware of the patterns, the fears, the survival mechanisms that once kept you safe, but now keep you stuck. And as you grow in awareness, you grow in choice. You begin to understand that attraction alone isn't enough. You begin to ask, does this connection honor my growth? Does it meet me where I am? Does it feel safe? Does it feel true? When you start loving yourself, really loving yourself, you naturally develop new standards, not out of ego, but out of reverence. You no longer settle for relationships that cost you your peace. You stop romanticizing potential and start respecting patterns. You stop asking, do they love me? And start asking, do I love who I become around them? That shift is everything, because now, love is no longer about filling a void. It's about sharing a life. It's about two whole people meeting, not to complete each other, but to complement each other. That kind of love is quiet, steady. It doesn't rush, it doesn't perform, and most importantly, it doesn't hurt. But you can't welcome that kind of love until you become a space where it feels safe to land. And becoming that space doesn't mean being perfect. It means being honest, being present, being grounded in who you are, so you no longer lose yourself in who someone else might be. Love that lasts doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't ask you to hide parts of yourself or sacrifice your truth for the sake of connection. It invites all of you. It celebrates your wholeness. But that invitation starts with you. When you stop betraying yourself to be loved, when you stop abandoning yourself to be chosen, you begin to shift your entire relationship to love itself. You begin to see that love isn't about intensity, it's about intimacy. It's not about grand gestures. It's about small moments of safety. It's not about being needed. It's about being known. And so the work is this: become who you're seeking. Cultivate within yourself the qualities you admire in others. If you want honesty, practice telling yourself the truth. If you want stability, build it within your own life. If you want deep love, start by offering yourself compassion in your darkest hours. You are your own starting point. You always have been. Because when you raise your own standard of self-love, the world around you begins to respond. Not instantly, not perfectly, but steadily. And over time, you'll begin to notice a quiet shift. You'll stop chasing love. You'll start allowing it. You'll stop attracting pain. You'll start attracting peace. And what once felt like longing will begin to feel like alignment. And alignment always finds its way home. There's a subtle kind of suffering that many of us live with without even realizing it. It doesn't come with sirens or heartbreak or tragedy. It's quieter than that. It creeps in during idle moments, when you're scrolling, observing, measuring. You see someone's life, their joy, their beauty, their love, and without even consciously choosing to, you begin to hold it up next to yours. You start comparing. And just like that, you start losing. You see, comparison doesn't simply make you feel inadequate. It separates you from yourself. It takes you out of your life and drops you into someone else's. It makes you question your timing, your choices, your worth. It makes you forget the things you've survived, the growth you've fought for, the quiet victories no one else sees. Comparison turns your life into a competition you didn't even sign up for. And the most painful part? No one else can win it for you because the version of yourself you're competing against isn't even real. It's an illusion, shaped by curated images, polished moments, and selective stories. And yet, we fall for it, over and over again. Because we're not just comparing lives, we're comparing worth. We're trying to find where we fit, how we measure up, whether or not we are enough. But here's the truth. Your worth was never meant to be measured against someone else's highlight reel. Your value is not dependent on how far ahead or behind you are. The soul doesn't keep score that way. It moves in seasons, not timelines. It cares more about depth than speed, more about truth than performance. We all arrive at our lives through different paths. Some of us begin in safety, others in chaos. Some are handed love freely, others must search for it in themselves. There is no universal map for growth, no perfect age for healing, no exact moment when everything should fall into place. To believe otherwise is to turn your journey into a race, and that race will always leave you feeling behind, even when you're doing just fine. The danger in comparison is that it strips away gratitude. It keeps you focused on what you lack, rather than what you carry. It makes you blind to your own becoming. You stop seeing the beauty of your own path because your eyes are too fixed on someone else's destination. And yet, we all do it, because we're taught to. From an early age, we're ranked, graded, measured, evaluated. We learn to seek approval through achievement, recognition, and comparison. We're taught that success has a shape, that love has a formula, that happiness has a look, and if ours doesn't match, we assume we've failed. But what if none of that was ever true? What if your life isn't meant to look like anyone else's? What if your journey is meant to teach you something entirely your own? That's the beauty of self-love. It invites you to come home to your own rhythm. It teaches you to stop borrowing other people's definitions of happiness and start writing your own. It reminds you that you don't need to move faster, shine brighter, or do more just to feel worthy. You only need to come back to yourself, again and again, until the noise fades and the truth settles in. And the truth is this: there is nothing wrong with where you are, even if it feels messy, unclear, uncertain. Even if someone else seems to be further ahead, their journey isn't yours, their growth isn't yours, their joy, no matter how beautiful, is not a reflection of your lack, it's simply a reflection of what's possible. When you learn to celebrate others without diminishing yourself, That's when you know you're healing. When you can witness someone else's success or love or peace, and instead of feeling envy, you feel expansion. That's your soul telling you this too is available to you, in your own way, in your own time. There's no need to rush your unfolding. Your healing isn't late. Your timing isn't off. Everything you are experiencing is part of a process far deeper than what can be seen on the surface. The roots of your growth are forming in silence, often without recognition. And just because your bloom doesn't look like someone else's, doesn't mean it isn't beautiful. But comparison keeps you distracted. It keeps you outside of yourself, disconnected from your truth, unable to see the sacredness in your now. And to live your life constantly looking sideways is to miss the miracle of what's directly in front of you, yourself. So what can you do? You return to presence, again and again. You close the apps. You quiet the noise. You breathe into the discomfort of not knowing, and you trust that your life is unfolding in ways that are far more intelligent than your fears. You remember that your value is not up for negotiation. It cannot be increased by praise or decreased by someone else's success. You were worthy before you were ever compared, and you'll remain worthy long after the comparisons fade. Every time you feel the urge to measure your life against someone else's, pause, turn inward. Ask yourself, who am I becoming, and am I proud of that person? Am I living in alignment with what matters to me? Am I moving with integrity even if no one else sees it? Because those are the only questions that lead to peace. Comparison will always be there, whispering, tempting, pulling at your insecurities, but you don't have to follow it. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to let it define you. Because peace isn't found by looking at someone else's path. It's found when you finally start walking your own. We spend so much of our lives searching for the moment when everything will make sense, searching for someone to meet us in our longing, to calm the ache, to reflect something back to us that we're not quite able to hold on our own. We look for love as if it's something waiting for us out there, hidden in another person, another story, another chapter. But eventually, if we're paying attention, we begin to see the truth. Not all at once, but slowly, steadily, that the love we're looking for is not out there. It's in here. It always has been. There's a kind of freedom that comes the moment you realize no one is coming to save you. Not because you're unworthy, but because you're already whole. There is no missing piece, no perfect partner who will finally fix the parts of you you've deemed unlovable. No relationship that will erase your self-doubt or make you feel safe in your own skin. We go searching for someone to give us back to ourselves, and yet the work of returning has always been ours. When you start loving yourself, not in theory, not as an idea, but as a living, breathing practice, everything shifts. You begin to treat yourself with the same gentleness you've offered to others. You stop speaking to yourself in ways you would never speak to someone you love. You begin to hold your own hand through the storm, instead of waiting for someone else to show up and do it for you. Because the love you think you're missing, it's you. It's the version of you that's been buried under expectations, self-criticism, and years of reaching outward. It's the part of you that's been waiting to be seen by you. Not fixed, not improved, not made more appealing, just seen. As you are. That kind of love is revolutionary, because it no longer depends on the reactions of others. It's not conditional. It's not performative. It's rooted in something deeper than admiration or approval. It's rooted in presence, in showing up for yourself when no one else does, in choosing to stand beside yourself when no one else does, when you feel strong and confident, but when you're afraid, when you're uncertain, when you're messy and in progress. So much of our suffering comes from placing love on a pedestal outside of ourselves. We chase it, We attach to it. We lose ourselves in the pursuit of being chosen. But love that costs you your self-respect is not love. Love that asks you to shrink is not love. Love that makes you abandon your truth just to keep it alive is not love. That's fear in disguise. The more you come back to yourself, the less you tolerate what dishonors you. The less you beg for crumbs. The less you settle for something that mirrors your wounds instead of your worth. When you become the love you're looking for, you stop confusing intensity with intimacy. You stop being impressed by what looks good and start being moved by what feels real. And it's in that space where you've learned to offer yourself the care, the attention, the validation you once thought only someone else could give, that you begin to live from overflow. You're no longer starving for love, so you stop chasing it. You're no longer desperate to be seen, so you stop performing. You're no longer afraid to be alone, so you stop compromising your peace just to keep someone around. You start living in a way that reflects your value. You eat like you love yourself. You rest like you love yourself. You speak like you love yourself. You set boundaries not to protect your ego, but to protect your energy. You stop trying to prove your worth and start simply embodying it. And when love does come from the outside, because it won't arrive to complete you. It will meet you. It will recognize you. It will mirror back the love you've already made a home inside yourself. And because of that, you'll receive it differently. You won't grasp. You won't lose yourself in it. You won't shapeshift or settle. You'll allow it without clinging to it. You'll share it without needing it to define you. There is nothing more magnetic than someone who has learned how to belong to themselves. Nothing more beautiful than someone who walks through life no longer asking, "Am I worthy of love?" but instead, "How can I live in a way that honors the love I already am?" This is not about perfection. It's not about reaching some untouchable level of self-love where you never feel lonely or vulnerable again. You'll still have moments. You'll still get triggered. You'll still question yourself. But you'll return more quickly. You'll catch the spiral sooner. You'll speak to yourself with more tenderness and less judgment. And that, more than anything, is what creates a solid foundation. Because when you are rooted in love within, you stop trying to earn it without. You stop searching for someone to give you what you've already decided to give yourself. And from that place, your life softens. You attract peace. You welcome truth. You hold space for love, not because you need it to survive. There's something profoundly powerful about realizing that you are the source, that the warmth you're longing for is something you can generate from within, that the belonging you crave is something you can offer yourself every single day. You are not missing love. You are remembering that you are it. So now I invite you, gently but urgently, stop searching for love like it's lost. Turn inward, get quiet, sit with yourself. Ask what part of you has been waiting for your own embrace. And when you find it, love it. Not someday, not when you're better, but now. Start small, but start. Be the love you've been looking for. If this touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore more videos just like this. Thank you.